Okay, what is the first normal form? Finally, I got to this point. I was expecting to do this in 45 minutes. First normal form says an entity that contains one or more repeating groups, it's in an unnormalized form. So if in your design you've got repeating attributes, etc., it's not in a normalized form. And actually, when you design, you assume that your design is not in a normalized form. It could be in a third normal form, but how you know it? By applying the rules. So when you find the entity's attributes, you do your ER diagram, you assume that this is not in a normal form at the beginning, right? For the next 2 weeks, then you will be better. You don't have to, you change your mindset, because then you can do good designs, or better designs than what you're doing now. So you get your design, like what you were doing in the last 2 weeks, you find the solution, you find the entities, attributes, set the primary keys, set the foreign keys, do your ER diagram, and then you say, okay, this is not in a normalized form. Or I assume my design is not in a normalized form. So then you apply the normalization rules to prove to yourself that it is in a normalized form. So what's the first normal form? Very easy. For each entity, you check each entity that it is in the first normal form or not. For each entity in your document, your solution document. An entity is in the first normal form if the intersection of each row and column, or each cell, or each attribute contains only one value. Contains only one value. For example, let's say you've got the customer table. Let's go back to that. You've got customer number, one value. Customer name, just one value. Customer address, one address. Customer telephone number, one telephone number. If your customer has got two telephone numbers, and you store both these details under this telephone number, it's not in the first normal form. You have to remove, you have to basically, we'll teach you how to do it. You have to remove that multiple values. So one value for each attribute at each row, intersection of a row and a column. Does this make sense? Very easy. You can say it. So if you have got multiple values, let's say you've got a customer that has got two telephone numbers, what do you do? What do you suggest we do? You have one attribute called telephone number, and your customer has got two telephone numbers, a mobile number, a home number. Yes?
Yeah, you mark them as mobile number and phone number.
Exactly. That's one solution that can temporarily solve the problem. So the answer is, if you've got a customer has got a mobile number and a home number, you create two attributes. One is called mobile number, and one is home number. Okay. I'll give you another example, and you can give me another solution. Let's say we have a branch. Let's look at a table branch. And we have a table branch, branch number, branch address, telephone number. Okay, attribute telephone number. And a branch can have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 telephone numbers currently. Later on, you might need more telephone numbers. If that branch becomes very popular, you might get the 6th line or 7th phone number or 8th phone number. How are you going to do it? Exactly right. But I'll come back to you. You've got a good answer. What do you think? Yes, Darren. Exactly right. Exactly right. So the answer is you have to remove that telephone number and create a new table that has the branch number and the telephone number. So now your branch can have as many telephone numbers as possible, or as you like. Does this make sense? We cannot just keep on adding extra attributes to the table, branch, say, okay, now we have a telephone number, branch address, telephone number. So we create one of our branches will have two telephone numbers. So we add another attribute called telephone number 2 to the table branch. When we get a third telephone number, we add another attribute. So we can't continue doing like this. It doesn't make sense. Because you have to keep on modifying your design, you have to keep on modifying your implementation. So what is the solution? if you've got multiple values that needs to be stored under one attribute, you remove that attribute from the table. For example, from table branch, you remove the table, your attribute telephone number, you create a new entity called branch telephone number. And that attribute would be one of the attributes of the branch telephone number table plus the primary key of the table branch. Shall I write it down? Yeah? Okay. Let's say you've got this situation, you have got a table called branch, and in this table you've got this situation, branch number, address, and telephone number. So branch B001, B002, we have two branches, and the addresses are 12 Belconnen Way and 13 Belconnen Way, so in ACT. And the telephone number is, in this one, 6251-6161, right? And the second branch has got two telephone numbers, 6251-6161 and 6162 and 6251-6163. So what we're saying to you is, can you see it, or is it not zoomed properly? Is it right? Can you see it? Okay? Yeah? Alright. So if you see an attribute in your table that has got multiple values stored on it in that location, in this case in here, have a look at it. So you remove that attribute from this table. You remove this one, create a new table, put that attribute there, alright? And you take with that attribute the primary key of the table from which it comes from. So let's say branch number is the primary key here. You also put the branch number in the new table. So what do we call the new table? Let's say we call it branch telephone number. So now this is removed from this table and the data goes into this new table. So you will have B001, the data 62516161, B002, the phone number 62516162, B002, the phone number 62516163. Exactly. What would be the primary key for the table branch telephone number? What do you think should be the primary key? Both of them. The telephone number and the branch number. So the branch number and the telephone number together will make the primary key for this new existing table. Not the telephone number. The branch number and the telephone number. And that's the rule for every table that you create, new table you create. Does this make sense? So there's no ambiguity. That's the rule. So the new attribute plus the primary key of the existing table, create the new table. The primary key for the new table would be both attributes. If there are three of them that it's another attribute that you're removing, the primary key would be the two attributes and the primary key of the existing table. So the rule is this. If you've got an attribute that has got multiple values stored on it, remove it, put it in the new table with the existing primary key of this table, from the table from which it comes, and make a new table. Alright? Let's accept this from me for time being till we get into more designs and solutions in a few weeks time. So this is the first normal form. So what you do is, for each entity, you keep on looking at your attributes and say, does this attribute have got only one value stored in it or not? If it is one value, then you check for all the attributes of every entity and you'll find your design is already in the first normal form. It's not necessary that your design is never in a normal form.
It's just you have to check it. So after you check every attribute of every entity, and you found out that there's no multiple values stored under each in any attribute, it's already in the first normal form. So you may not have to change your design. Does this make sense? Because you're so good, you just do a design that's already in the first normal form. Okay, we already told you what to do, right, if it is not in the first normal form. Okay, in the second normal form, so you go back again, you look at all your entities, you look at all your attributes, primary key and foreign keys, and the second normal form is based on the full functional dependencies. And what it does is really say, what is a full functional dependency? The whole idea is that every attribute in every entity should just be determined using the primary key of that entity. So that means set your primary keys correctly. So second normal form says any non-primary key attribute should be only determined by having the value of the primary key for that row of table. Does this make sense? So what it is telling you, be very careful with your primary key. So you look at your entities and look at your primary key and say this primary key alone determines all other attributes. No other non-primary key attribute determines anything else. And knowing a primary key, I can determine every single attribute's value in a row of a table. Does this make sense? Very easy. Just set your primary key correctly. Yeah? Right. And third normal form, finally we are there. So if there is a transitive dependencies in your entities, then you have to remove it. So what we're saying here is, you look at your design, it's already in the first normal form. That means no attribute has got multiple values. It's already in the second normal form. That means every primary key of every entity can determine the value of other attributes of that entity. That means knowing the primary key of one entity, I can tell you the value of every entity in that row of that table. So it's already in the second normal form. Then you check for the third normal form. You don't do it any other way. You don't do first normal form, third normal form. You do first, second, and third. So it's already in the second normal form, so you just check. You check all your non-primary key attributes, every single non-primary key attribute in one entity, you check. You see, is this non-primary key attribute can determine any other attribute in this entity? If it is, then you have to remove it. You have to remove the other attribute that it can determine and create a new table. All right. So if you're in the third normal form with your design, if it is in the first normal form, second normal form, and any attribute that's not a primary key in an entity cannot determine the value of any other attribute.